So picture a grumpy, just utterly defeated 11-year-old boy named Erasmus.
Okay.
He has just trudged into this dusty antique bookstore, and he is soaking wet from the rain right after a, let's say, less than stellar birthday party in Blackpool.
Oh, that sounds miserable.
It is. And he looks up at his mentor, this older woman named Mrs. V, and he declares, with all the heavy, dramatic certainty that an 11-year-old can muster, he says, there is no magic, it's all a farce.
Which, I mean, that is a pretty heavy worldview for a kid who's barely out of grade school. It's like the ultimate cynical surrender.
It really is, yeah. But now I want you to contrast that image with the exact same person decades later.
Right, the esteemed Professor Cromwell-Smith.
Exactly. He's elderly now, and he's running incredibly late for his own college lecture. And he is frantically waving his arms in the middle of the street trying to flag down a campus patrol car.
Which is just a great visual.
Right. And why is an elderly professor chasing down the cops? Because he desperately needs a ride so he can rush his students this precious, tiny blue and yellow children's book equipped with a little bronze lock and key.
I mean, the visual of a respected academic begging a cop for a ride just so he can read a children's book to a room full of college students, it's fantastic. It tells you immediately that whatever is inside that book isn't just sentimental fluff.
Exactly, and that book is the center of today's deep dive. We are unpacking Professor Cromwell-Smith's literary incantations, which we pulled from this really fascinating stack of sources outlining his life and teachings.
Yeah, and the mission today is to explore a completely radical definition of magic.
Right, because the sources argue that magic isn't some supernatural trickery with wands and top hats, and it is definitely not a denial of reality.
No, not at all. Instead, it is a deliberate, highly practical way of perceiving and creating meaning in your everyday life.
It's essentially a cognitive framework.
Exactly. When we talk about magic in this context, we're talking about an active filter you place over your perception.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Think of this concept of magic like a pair of augmented reality glasses.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like when you put on AR glasses, the physical street you're walking down doesn't actually change.
Aye.
The brick buildings are still brick, the pavement is still cracked.
Sure.
But the data, the color, the meaning that is suddenly overlaid on top of that physical world, that changes everything about how you interact with it. A boring street suddenly has waypoints and hidden layers.
That's a perfect analogy because the physical reality remains identical, right? But your psychological reality shifts entirely. And the reason this is so crucial, why you listening to this should care about a children's book philosophy, is because of the sheer volume of cynical data we process every day.
Well, absolutely. The information overload is intense.
It's crushing. We are bombarded by daily frustrations, bad news, the grinding weight of routine. If you don't actively choose an overlay, the default lens the world forces on you is usually one of stress or apathy. So adopting this specific lens of magic isn't a childish escape at all. From a psychological standpoint, it functions as a potent survival tool for the mind.
But to understand how to actually use this lens, we kind of have to know what the code for this AR overlay actually looks like. What does the author actually consider magic to be?
Which brings us back to the bookstore.
Right, back to that rainy Tuesday where Mrs. V pulls out a tiny key, unlocks that blue and yellow book, and reads a poem called The Magic in Life to Grumpy Young Erasmus. The poem essentially lays out the author's vast magic inventory.
And it casts an incredibly wide net. It doesn't just focus on the grandiose stuff.
Yeah, it ranges from the epic forces of nature, like the roaring thunder or the majestic flight of an eagle.
To the beautifully mundane.
Exactly. Things like a little dog wagging his tail or grandma's wisdom, or even just a family sitting around a dinner table laughing and arguing after a meal.
It's framing magic as the active appreciation of just being present.
Right. But I have to stop here because there's a line in this inventory that I really struggled with.
Oh, yeah. Which part?
Well, the author writes that magic is found in the exhilarating high of winning, which, makes sense. Winning feels great. But then it immediately claims magic is also in the deflating low of losing.
Ah, yes.
And I'm sorry, but try telling someone who just lost their job or went through a terrible breakup that they're experiencing magic. That feels a bit hollow. How does the misery of losing fit into this framework without sounding like, I don't know, empty self-help?
That's a highly valid pushback. And to understand it, we really have to look at the psychological mechanism the author is describing here. Because in another piece of the source material, a poem called Winning is Not for the Faint of Heart, The author argues that you only win when you've endured countless setbacks.
Okay.
So loss is categorized as magical because it is the ultimate proof that you are in the arena.
Oh, so it's about the vulnerability of participating.
Exactly. It's about emotional bandwidth. Think of it through the lens of emotional regulation. If you build walls to protect yourself from the deflating low of losing, you simultaneously numb your capacity to feel the exhilarating high of winning.
You flatten your entire emotional landscape.
You do. Feeling the raw, agonizing sting of a loss is undeniable proof that you cared enough to put your heart on the line. That vulnerability, that friction of participating in the risky game of life is the mechanism of magic. You literally can't have the overlay without the contrast.
I see. So it totally reframes failure.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that the pain itself is enjoyable, but the capacity to feel that pain means your sensors are fully operational. It's like the cost of entry to a vibrant life.
Exactly. And that leads directly to the poem's ultimate conclusion, which is that to capture this magic, you only have to love life exactly as it has been given to you. Magic, in this framework, is synonymous with love.
Loving yourself, loving others.
And loving the sheer privilege of being a participant, even when it results in a scar.
Wow. Okay, so if that first poem, The Magic in Life, anchors us firmly in the tangible present, the dog wagging its tail, the raw sting of a recent loss, the deep dive now moves to how we project that magic into the boundless potential of the future.
Right, moving from what is to what could be.
Exactly. And that brings us to the second poem Mrs. V reads, called The Blue Unicorn. She opens the book, and this stunning, vivid, mythical creature just bursts from the pages.
And the blue unicorn acts as a really powerful symbol here. It represents a person, a force, or an aspiration that provides meaning and purpose to each and every day we are alive.
It's the forward-looking counterpart to the first poem.
Right.
But I'm going to play devil's advocate again here. Actually, I don't even have to because a student in Professor Cromwell-Smith's class does it for me.
Oh, right, Marcus.
Yes, there's an engineering student named Marcus who raises his hand and says what a lot of people listening are probably thinking. He basically asks, in a harsh, pragmatic reality, isn't looking for a blue unicorn just toxic positivity? Isn't it just a delusion?
Yeah, he's not buying it.
And I'm kind of with Marcus on this one. If my bank account is overdrawn or my car breaks down, a mythical blue unicorn isn't going to fix my transmission.
Right. It's the classic clash between the pragmatic engineer and the romantic poet. And Marcus is entirely correct that a unicorn doesn't pay the bills.
Exactly.
But the professor's rebuttal is brilliant because he doesn't deny the harshness of reality. He tells Marcus that the blue unicorn is not an escape from reality, it is an existential shield.
I love that term, existential shield. But mechanically, what does that actually mean? How does a symbol protect you?
It protects you from despair, which is the actual thing that stops you from fixing the transmission. When you face a crisis, the facts of the crisis are neutral. Your car is broken. The despair comes from the narrative you attach to it, like, my life is a mess, nothing ever goes right for me.
Right, the spiraling.
Exactly. The existential shield, this unicorn, this chosen aspiration, gives you a focal point of meaning despite the broken car. It's very similar to Viktor Frankl's psychological observation.
Oh, about finding meaning in suffering.
Yes. Meaning doesn't erase suffering, but it makes suffering endurable. The unicorn is a conscious choice to seek out wonder and purpose, which gives you the grit to handle the mundane and the catastrophic.
Let me go back to the AR glasses analogy really quick. If life is a chaotic, messy map, the unicorn is the heads-up display, the HUD, that highlights your ultimate objective.
Yes, exactly.
The HUD doesn't remove the traffic jam, but it keeps you focused on where you were going so you don't just park your car on the highway and give up.
That's a great way to put it. And actually, another student named Megan synthesizes this perfectly during the lecture.
What does she say?
She points out how the two poems operate as a dual system. The magic in life grounds us in what is the tangible present. The blue unicorn inspires us to envision what could be. You need both.
Because without the present, you're just daydreaming.
Right. And without the future aspiration, you're just surviving.
Wow. But let's look at the flip side of this for a second. If magic is just a lens we choose to wear, a cognitive overlay, what happens when that system gets hacked? Hacked how? Like, what happens when we accidentally put on the wrong lens? This brings us to a part of the sources that I found incredibly revealing, specifically looking at the professor's lesson on anger.
Oh, yes. This is where the philosophy gets highly practical. Because a lens doesn't just filter what comes in, right? It alters what you project outward.
Exactly. So the sources share this anecdote, where the older Professor Cromwell-Smith Wakes up on a rainy day, he's feeling anxious about his health, and he's just in a profoundly grumpy mood.
He feels a literal storm cloud over his head.
Right. But he remembers Mrs. V's lessons, forces a shift in his perspective, and manages to walk into his lecture hall with this magnetic, positive energy. And to explain how he did this, he tells his class a story about when he was young Erasmus.
Like in Blackpool.
Yep. Erasmus goes for a walk through his town, and he notices that literally everyone around him is absolutely furious.
It's like a cascade of rage. Everywhere he looks, there's conflict.
It's almost comical. The cabbie is screaming at an old man. The milkman is shouting at kids who crash their bikes. The mailman is mad at a pregnant lady.
The bartender is throwing things and cursing.
The newsstand owner is damning the universe over a spilled soda. Even Erasmus's own mother chases him out of the house because he had the audacity to point out a new white hair on her head.
Okay, to be fair to his mother, pointing out a new white hair is universally a terrible idea.
True, he definitely deserved that one. But Erasmus is just utterly overwhelmed by all this. He runs to Mrs. V and asks, "Has everyone gone mad? What is going on?"
Right, he thinks the town is cursed.
And Mrs. V scratches her head, waves her hands, casts this mock spell on him, modicum modicum modicus, and makes him read a poem called The Land of the Happy People.
Yeah.
And my main question when reading this was, what is the actual mechanism here? Was the entire town of Blackpool actually having a collective meltdown on that specific Tuesday?
And that is the exact question Mrs. V poses to him. She asks him, why today of all days? Why did you notice anger in all those people today, but not yesterday?
Oh, interesting.
Because these townspeople have the same baseline personalities every single day. The bartender is always a bit gruff. The cabbie is always impatient. And then she drops the philosophical hammer on him.
What did she say?
She says, was it really their anger you detected, or could it have been your own?
Oh, wow. So she's calling him out.
She is completely calling him out. She's explaining the psychological concept of projection, or what we sometimes call emotional contagion.
So the anger wasn't an objective reality blanketing the town.
No, it was the tint of Erasmus's own lens. Mrs. V describes anger as a body snatcher. It's an insidious emotion because it doesn't just sit quietly inside you. It actively scans the environment for justification.
So it hijacks your AR glasses and highlights every minor slight, every grumpy face, and every inconvenience as a massive, deliberate attack.
Exactly. It's like the frequency illusion. You know, when you buy a red car and suddenly you see red cars everywhere.
Yes,
If you wake up with the anger lens on, your brain is actively searching for evidence to validate why you should be angry. You filter out the milkman smiling at a customer, and you hyper-focus on him yelling at the kids.
And that is a crucial realization for anyone listening to this right now. Think about your own commute or a tough day at the office. When it feels like you are completely surrounded by incompetent, frustrating, or hostile people, the statistical probability that everyone simultaneously decided to ruin your day is practically zero.
Almost zero.
It is almost certainly a cue that your own lens has been compromised. You can't control the cabbie, but you can control the fact that you are letting his baseline grumpiness dictate your reality.
Perfectly said.
So if we know that we actively project our internal state onto the world, the next logical question is, how do we debug the system? How do we take off the anger lens and deliberately project that magic and joy instead?
And that shifts the conversation to the mechanics of building a well-lived life. The sources offer a really beautiful framework for this, centered around a concept called the spinning wheel of life.
Yes, Mrs. V has Erasmus read a piece that argues life is not a straight line. It's not a path from point A to point B. It is a series of never-ending elliptical bends and curves.
Right, everything comes and goes around full circle.
Because the wheel perpetually spins, an end is never just a permanent stop, right? It is intrinsically an invitation to a new beginning.
Which is a profound cognitive reframe. If you view life as a straight line, an ending, say, losing a job or a relationship ending, feels like hitting a brick wall, it's a tragedy. But if you view life as a flowing loop, that ending is just the necessary momentum carrying you into the next curve. It demands that you ask, what am I supposed to begin now?
And Mrs. V tells them that we either draw well-lived and rounded circles or we don't. And years later, Professor Cromwell-Smith turns this philosophy into a literal classroom ritual.
I love this part.
At the end of his lecture on anger, he doesn't just give them a platitude. He raises his hand and simply draws a deliberate circle in the air with two fingers joined together.
And the physical act is so important there. The students are completely mesmerized by it. They start emulating him, drawing their own circles in the air. It becomes this shared gesture, a greeting and a parting among them.
It makes me think of the wake of a boat. As you move through the water, you passively leave a trail that rocks the boats behind you. If you're angry, you leave a choppy, destructive wake. But wait, actually, the boat analogy doesn't quite work, does it?
Why not?
Because a boat leaves a wake accidentally. It's just displacing water.
Yeah.
Drawing a circle is different.
You're hitting on the core distinction right there. A wake is passive. Drawing a circle in the air is a conscious, deliberate physical action.
It's intentional.
Very intentional. Psychologically, anchoring a cognitive shift to a physical movement is a known technique for grounding yourself. When the professor draws that circle, he is forcing his brain to acknowledge, I am actively choosing how I close this moment. I am choosing not to leave a jagged edge of anger.
He's choosing to project the magic.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis of everything we've discussed today, the magic formula.
The formula is that magic isn't a hidden treasure waiting to be stumbled upon by a lucky few who never experience hardship.
Right.
It is co-created. It is a dynamic partnership between the raw materials of reality and your deliberate effort to forge those materials into something meaningful. You have to actively put on the glasses.
We've covered incredible ground today. We started with a tangible inventory of daily magic, realizing that even the painful sting of a loss is proof that we are alive and in the arena.
Yep.
We moved to the forward-looking existential shield of the blue unicorn, learning that choosing an aspiration isn't delusion, but a necessary protection against despair. We examined the dangerous glitch of the anger lens, realizing that when the whole world seems mad, we're usually just projecting our own body-snatched mind. And finally, we learned the mechanics of the spinning wheel and how actively drawing positive circles can reframe our endings into beginnings.
It's a comprehensive toolkit for taking radical responsibility for your own perception.
It really is. But I want to end on a thought that goes beyond just helping yourself. At the end of the Blue Unicorn reading, Mrs. V tells young Erasmus something really touching.
What's that?
She says that we all need special people who bring out the best in us. She was, effectively, his blue unicorn. She was the one who sprinkled magic into his grumpy life.
She was his existential shield when he couldn't hold one up for himself.
Right. But that creates a potential trap, doesn't it? If your magic relies entirely on someone else being your blue unicorn, what happens when they aren't around? If you outsource your perception of magic to a mentor, a partner, or a boss, you are incredibly vulnerable if that person leaves or lets you down.
That is the danger of remaining a passive consumer of magic. You end up waiting to be rescued.
Which means the ultimate evolution of this philosophy requires flipping the script. Don't just spend your life desperately searching the horizon for a blue unicorn to arrive and fix your lens. The challenge is to ask yourself, how can you be that blue unicorn for someone else today?
How can you step into the role of the life wizard, right? When you see someone who is clearly trapped behind a heavy, distorting lens of anger or sadness, when they are stuck in their own version of Blackpool in the rain, how can you be the one to draw a positive circle around them?
Because the brilliant thing about co-creating magic is that the moment you choose to project it for someone else, you inherently install the overlay for yourself.
It's a feedback loop.
Exactly. You don't just see the magic, you become the source of it. And I think that is a vastly more powerful way to walk through the world. We'll leave you with that to chew on. Think about whose lens you might be able to shift today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the true nature of magic and perception. We'll see you next time.